Alright, welcome back for part 3 of the Cave Surfer game. So we've got the code built for our cave sprites, but they're not moving yet, and our main character's not moving yet, so we want to go ahead and get things going here. So the first thing we want to do is select the main character sprite, and I'm using the octopus, so I'm going to go ahead and select that. And then we want to use a couple of different blocks to make the main character sprite change distance, that variable we created in part 2, by 1 forever whenever the green flag is clicked. So I'm going to go to my events menu and pull out a when green flag is clicked. I want this to always change distance by 1, so I'm going to use a forever loop. And then I'm going to go to the data menu, and I want it to change distance by a value of 1. Alright, so let's go ahead and test what happens when we do this. And we see that our backdrops are starting to scroll. Let's see what happens if we change the value instead to something like 10. Now our backdrops are scrolling a lot faster. Awesome. Okay, so play around with that value, see what happens, find one that you like. The next thing that we're going to do is create a start game function. So when we're building a function, remember we want to go to the more blocks menu, and this is where we're going to take several other blocks or concepts or actions in Scratch and put them together to create just one block that we want to use over and over. So the first step is to click make a block. And we're going to call this one Start Game. And we're going to use this to control how the game starts. So I've just named Start Game. And some of the required things that we want to include at the start of any game is we want to actually reset the location of all of the cave backdrops and of our starting sprites. So let's go ahead and to reset the starting point for our backdrops, we need to actually change distance back to 0 so that they all go to the original location. The next thing we should do is probably give the octopus a starting location. So I'm going to drag him where I want on the screen. Maybe here you'll see that the go to block changes. Drag him where I want, and then I'm going to use a go to block to give him a starting location. And I also want to give him a starting costume because there's multiple costumes and I'm going to want him to look like he's moving eventually. So let's make one of the costumes the starting one. We can use octopus egg. Awesome. If there are other things you want to use to start out the game, you can add them into the function here. There's a spot for you to design how else to start the game. Once you've done that, the last important step when you're defining and using a function is to actually make sure you call it. So this hat block here, this is so that we can define the function start game, but to call it in our program, we actually have to come back to the more blocks menu and drag out the start game. Now, I want it to start the game, or I want it to run the function start game right after the green flag is clicked so that everything resets itself, and you see that it does. Awesome. So now we've got a start game function. We've called it in our program. You're ready to do this on your own and then move on to part 4.